Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Brody. I am joined with a very special guest, Richie Chicago of Off the Cuff Podcast. We are super excited to have him, and especially what we're talking about today, the Chicago Bulls and their game tonight against the Atlanta Hawks. But before we begin our show, we want to welcome Richie. Before we hop in, Richie, can you talk a little bit about Off the Cuff Podcast? I've been on it. It's a lot of fun, but, got to talk to the viewers exactly what it's all about and how they can watch.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, by the way, Nick. Off the Cuff Podcast is like a live podcast on Twitch and Facebook. We cover Chicago sports. We cover comedy. We cover pop culture. It's I call it like a fan interactive show because our audience members can actually like chime in on chat. They can chime in via calling us or via voicemail, or we have different like commands where they can like, I have a light behind me over here where like they can access that throughout the whole time. And like, let's say if like the Blackhawks score, the Bulls like win, the light goes off, we party and stuff like that. So it's a very fun atmosphere type of like podcast. So we're on every Tuesday, 9 p.m. Central. Check us out on twitch.tv/ShootYourShotSports.
Yeah, and we'll have all the links in the description, so make sure that you guys go and follow them. And Richie, one quick question is I see there's a basketball hoop in the background. And
Yes.
how many times have you come home back to the studio and you've kind of looked at it and you've just absolutely ripped the rim when you get home?
It's actually not real. So like it's a painting. So if I just touch it, like it's
okay.
It's one of those 3D ones.
If anyone watching also thought that was a legit basket, like I'm not crazy, but that from my angle and the TV and everything, it literally looks like it's 3D. So that whoever did that did a pretty awesome job.
So little background. So it says actually Shoot Your Shot. So the company I founded is called Shoot Your Shot Sports. And it's like a podcast network. And the reason why I got that was because of Shoot Your Shot Sports. So it was like literally the perfect thing. I'm like, I need this for my studio. So like, yeah, that's the reason why I have that there.
So let's jump into, speaking of shooting our shot, the Bulls have been struggling a little bit lately against good ball clubs. Against 500 or plus ball clubs, the Bulls are 19-17 this season, and they are 2-13 against teams that are above 600. Not good, especially when the Bulls are second in the Eastern Conference when they do want to make a deep playoff run. So we're going to give you guys a little bit of a quick preview. By the way, the Atlanta Hawks are not a bad team. Their record does not speak to this team. They've had a lot of injuries. They've had a lot of, chemistry issues, but on paper, they have a very talented roster. So let's kind of jump into it. The Bulls are 39-23 going for win 40 tonight against the Atlanta Hawks, but the Hawks are 29-32. So they're in 10th in the Eastern Conference. They still can technically get into the playoffs if they start getting hot. Also, there could be the play-in tournament factor to it, but it's crazy to think that the Bulls are 2 games behind Miami, especially with their rough record against winning teams. We'll get into that in our next topic. But the Bulls are still without Alex Caruso. They're still without Lonzo Ball, and they're still without Patrick Williams. 3 young core guys, especially Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso, for their defense. Not saying that P. Will can't play defense, but it's obviously not developed like the 2 little bit more seasoned veterans. Alex Caruso has been rumored to come back, quote, very soon. So that could mean he could come back tomorrow night against the Milwaukee Bucks, which that would be the same exact game that he last played in when Grayson Allen fouled him. Super dirty. Everyone hates Grayson Allen. I know I do. I'm sure, Richie, you do as well. And then another thing is that Trae Young is questionable and John Collins is doubtful. So the Bulls have that advantage. So just want to put this out there. Richie, how important to this team is it that these 3 guys, Alex Caruso, Lonzo Ball, and Patrick Williams, get back on the court in the right time, not rushing their injuries, making sure that they're fully good to go for the playoffs? But who's the most important in your opinion? And just overall, how is it going to revamp this Bulls team?
I feel like Alex Caruso I guess both Alex Caruso and Lonzo Ball, just because the Bulls need more defense on their end. So DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine can actually focus on like making buckets and scoring for them. They're doing both on both ends of the court. And honestly, it's not a good product at the moment because they're tired. They need to basically specialize what they specialize in. So we need the defense to actually to keep going. So it's crazy. Yeah.
And the Bulls were actually a top 5 team in steals before Alex Caruso started to catch this injury bug / the COVID bug that he had in the middle of the season. So we really haven't had Alex Caruso besides the first quarter of the season consistently. And the Bulls defense was fantastic. But a lot of people also forget about Lonzo Ball's defense. I mean, he's a bigger guard. He's good at going after the ball, making interceptions. So I agree with what you're saying is that, we need that defensive presence. Not saying that the Bulls are a bad defensive team, but they are ranked 14th in overall points allowed according to ESPN stats. So clearly that's the stats of what it is. But, another thing that I want to ask you, Richie, is that from your experience as a Bulls fan, just looking at this defense, we got to live through the D-Rose days. We got to live through the Baby Bulls days. Like, how exactly when you look at this roster, when you say Caruso, you see Lonzo Ball, you see Patrick Williams, what players do they remind you of from the past, couple crazy Bulls teams that we've had?
I mean, are we talking like 90s Bulls or like more like recent, like the D-Rose like Bulls?
I would say 2006 to now.
Okay. I feel like, well, are we just doing Caruso or are we doing like everyone on the team?
Whoever you want. I mean, Alex Caruso, I can speak to very quickly. I think you and I might say the same person, but just speak to everyone really quickly if you can.
Yeah, I mean, I could see like Kobe White being more like a Van Gordon at the moment because he could like spot up and shoot. Let's see, Lonzo Ball. He's like a facilitator, so maybe like Kirk Hinrich maybe a little bit, and then Caruso. He's like a 6th man to me a little bit. So, shoot. I'm trying to figure out like who's like a good 6th man back in 06. But yeah, like those are like 2 at the moment I could think of.
Yeah.
How about you?
I see Alex Caruso. He kind of reminds me of like that Ronnie Brewer vibe, like just a tough guy that goes on the court, doesn't care who's in front of him. He's going to defend you. And that's what I loved about Ronnie Brewer. And in regards to Kobe White, you hit the nail on the head. Ben Gordon is the first guy that I think of, especially now that Kobe White has developed that 3-point shot. And by the way, our sponsor of this episode is the Bench Mob. Make sure that you go to benchmob.com and use code JAY20 to get 20% off your order. And, Kobe White, the Bench Mob, he is the heart of it right now. Besides Alex Caruso, who's been out, Kobe White has definitely taken on that role, which is something that you really respect. He's come a long way in the league. He's played for Jim Boylan, who did not play him well in his system. So I totally agree with you. And then Patrick Williams, it's kind of hard to say. I see he's much better than the guy I'm about to say, and he wasn't really a bench player, but I don't know if you remember Tyrese Thomas, just the lankiness, the drive, not the shot. Tyrese Thomas could not shoot for anything, but just like that overall swagger and that hungry on the floor. Like that's what I saw, especially when I was growing up as a Bulls fan. So, the better days are coming for this Bulls team. And Richie, before we get into our final topic of today, what is one Bulls player from the last, from 2006 on, so, 2011, 2012, anybody, if you could have back on this roster currently that would help take it to the next level, who would that player be?
I mean, in his prime, I would want Joakim Noah. I think we need like a big presence, obviously. I mean, I know we got Tristan Thompson and all that, but I feel like we still need that presence. He was the heart and soul, I feel like, of that team, whatever that was. It felt so long ago, but yeah, like he was like the heart and soul. He pumped you up. He did everything he could to like, I guess, bring the Bulls back. He was great motivator. So yeah.
And by the way, full disclaimer, we are not choosing Derrick Rose. That one's too easy. That was way too easy. If I were to bring back anyone though, especially with the 3-point struggles that the Bulls have had over the last couple of years, it would be Ben Gordon. I think that Ben Gordon on this team would raise havoc, especially he was like the OG deep 3-baller for the Bulls. And I was really upset when he ended up going to Charlotte. Obviously, business is business, and he wanted money. But that's someone I feel like could improve this Bulls roster. So going into our last topic, talking about how deep this Bulls team can go with the current roster. The Bulls are second in the East. Their record doesn't speak to that, though. We kind of hit it on in the beginning of the episode. Even though they're 39-23, they're 16 games above 500. 13 of their losses. So just put that in perspective. 23 losses, 13 of them have come against teams that are 600 or better. Overall, 17 of those losses have come against teams that are 500 or better. The Bulls have struggled to dominate against teams that are, going to likely play them in the playoffs. And if you do the math, They are 20-6 against teams that are 500 or below, which they should be because the Bulls are a very talented team, but they can't seem to get over the hump of beating strong teams. So Richie, what is the biggest area of concern that you see from this Bulls roster?
Honestly, well, I alluded to it before, but I feel like we need a big presence, like a big man presence. And to see how far we would go, honestly, I feel like seeding is important. So I feel like luck's going to play a lot into how far we get into the playoffs, because if the other teams can knock out each other kind of per se, and we get a seeding where we get to face a team that we can match up well against, then we can actually go far. So it's a little bit of luck, a little bit of more like getting there and matching up perfectly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like what could kind of happen, and Bulls fans, if you want to chime in, please chime in the comments, is one thing is that if you remember from the 2010, 2011 Bulls that went to the Eastern Conference Finals against LeBron James and the Miami Heat, one thing that definitely came from that team is that they were in the same situation. They beat teams that they should be, and they lost to teams that were just slightly better than them. But it wasn't like they were losing by 2-3 points. They were getting blown out. And that's something that is a big concern as well. And, going against these teams, if the Bulls are the second seed, that means they'd be playing at least the 7th seed. And, if you look at the Eastern Conference, it's roughly 500, it's flirting with that 500 point. The Bulls can't beat teams like that. They are technically better than 500 against 500 or better teams. But that doesn't mean that, I would hate for this team, how talented it is, to go get knocked out in the second round, because they could easily go to the Eastern Conference Finals. And if they actually get it going together, but again, those 3 key guys are out. So I agree with you on that. And one more question before we close out is, if you had to choose, if before the season began and you saw the DeMar DeRozan signing, what was your initial reaction?
I loved it. Honestly, I know everyone hated it, but I've seen DeMar in Toronto. I've seen DeMar in San Antonio, but I know he wasn't as great in San Antonio, but I felt like he was a player that we needed to help Zach LaVine with the load that he was doing in the prior year. Zach was doing everything, but with DeMar, it definitely helps with the offensive scoring. So it's great.
Yeah, I think everyone in Chicago understood the talent and leadership they were getting. And everyone around the league was like, why would you pay DeMar DeRozan, $23 million a year? And everyone's like, well, you're paying Steph Curry, what, $45 million to $50 million a year after all of his incentives. You're going to pay James Harden crazy money. You're going to pay Kevin Durant crazy money. We're getting better stats and better leadership out of him and more consistency than big name players than anybody else. So I think more so that the other teams, the reason why everyone's quiet is because they're jealous and they're just eating their words, and DeMar DeRozan loves it. So I'm pretty pumped about it. But Richie, closing out right now, what do you think the final score of tonight's game is going to be against the Atlanta Hawks?
It's going to be high scoring. I feel like Trae Young's getting back into it again.
If he plays.
If he plays. Yeah. If he plays, let's go probably Bulls 121, Hawks 108. So blowout. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
But what if Trae Young doesn't play?
It'll probably be in the hundreds still, but probably lower, maybe 111 to 103 or something, more closer, I feel like.
Yeah. Hey, I like that. You gave Bulls wins, so that's exactly what everyone wants to see anyway. So with that, we're excited about tonight's games. Should be a good one. Bulls are looking to get back on track as they have back-to-back games against the Atlanta Hawks and Milwaukee Bucks tomorrow night at the United Center. Our team will be there. Stay tuned for that. But Richie, thanks for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Definitely. We'll see you guys later. Stay tuned for tomorrow's Bears podcast. But with that, thank you very much for joining this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Vic Brody, joined alongside Richie Chicago, and we will see you guys next time.